This is a worked example for demonstrating how text extraction works in Excel and Google Sheet. This example uses the worksheet or the workbook text processing that is provided alongside with this recording. And more specifically, we are looking at the exercise tab in this. So in this example, we have a column that contains, let's go and make this a little bit bigger so it's a little bit easier to see because it's actually across multiple lines. Let's see if we can just make them all the same size so it's a little bit easier to read. So you can see that each one of them has the structure of a member fee, colon, the value of the member fee, a comma, the member name with a colon, and then the member's first name and last name. Although we do have an exception here where the member's last name is not there, but let's initially not worry about this. So the way we solve this, of course, is that we need to come up with a strategy. So we got to figure out, well, we want to extract the fee, the first name, and the last name. So we need to figure out how we recognize in this composite text, in this sort of unstructured text, which part of it is the member fee and which part is the member name. Now, if we can assume that it's always member fee, we can actually have a couple of different choices here, right? Because if it's always member fee colon space, then we could just simply count. You know, M is 1, E is 2, M is position 3, B is position 4, and so on. We could actually simply count up to see where it starts. The problem is, what would happen if we had maybe in the future, let's say a member who maybe purchases a lifetime membership for $49,000. So we can't always rely on the member fee being just 2 digits. Now, might be other ways of doing this. For example, we always see that there is a colon followed by a space. So we could also look for the colon space and then say, well, we grab everything that's between the colon space, and more precisely the character after the colon space, up until the first comma, right? So essentially everything between the colon space and the comma would be the membership fee, no matter how much and how many sort of characters or digits that's going to be. So a couple ways you can do this. One of the simplest ways to do this is to just simply come up with auxiliary columns and sort of put temporary values in there. Again, from a program perspective, this is a lot like creating temporary variables, right? So let's try this. Let's go see if we can look for colon and comma. So that's the position of the colon and a comma. That's what we're going to call this, right? So find might work for this, right? So we're going to find colon in space in this string right here. Let's see if we find that. Well, that's 11, so that works pretty well. 11, okay, that seems about right because they're always the same. It's always member fee colon space. You can, of course, count to M1, 2, 3, all the way up to, and it's 11. If I would actually know where it starts, then it's really 2 positions more because that's going to give us really the start of the substring colon space, which would be the position of the colon. And what we really want is the position of the first digit, which is, of course, 2 spaces more, assuming that there's only ever 1 space between them. Otherwise, it might get a little bit more tricky to do that. So the next thing we want is the position of the first comma. You can do that too with a find, right? So we're going to look for the first comma in that. Looks a little bit funny, so be careful that this comma here is inside double quotes, which means we're looking for the comma. It's a comma inside a string versus the comma here, which is the separated between the 2 arguments. So it's 15. That seems about right. Let's copy that down. All right, let's see if we can grab everything between the start of the digits and the end. So mid is probably going to be our best bet. Mid, we're going to start here, but remember that's the position of the colon. We really want to go 2 spaces over, colon space, and then the next one would be the 4, and then of course the 3 and the 4. And then how far do we want to go? Number of characters. Ooh, that's going to be interesting. So let's just simply assume we're just going to go 2 characters. Just 2 characters, because it's always 2 characters, right? It's 49, 39, 49. Now, of course, this would not work if somebody's membership fee was either more than 2 digits or fewer than 2 digits, right? So if you do that, just to prove this to you, it wouldn't work. It would only always grab the first 2. So how could we adjust this? How many characters do we know we need to grab? Well, if we know that the comma is at position 15, and we know that the first digit is at the position of the substring colon space plus 2, then the difference between the 2 would give us the number of characters in between. It's kind of like length on a sort of a number line, right? You've got 15 on the number line, you've got 11 plus 2 in the number line, 13. 15 minus 13 would give you what you're looking for. So we can use that, right? A bit of a sneaky way of doing this. Subtracting that, and of course, don't forget, you need to add 2 to this, right? Actually, I've got to be careful here. So I'm going to subtract that from E4 plus 2. Of course, if you did the math, it would really be F4 minus E4 minus 2. Sometimes you just have to try it if you don't want to think through the whole logic, and try it and see what it turns out to be. All right, so that works. So let's see if we could put this down. Oh, so now we're getting that. Now, obviously, that was not the original data, but we just kind of added a test case here. All right, so that works. That's good. All right, so you can calculate the sum of the fees now, which is one of the other questions. Oh, that's kind of surprising. Why does this happen? Well, the problem is that the mid function, of course, is a text processing function. It returns text, it returns characters, it returns the character 4 and the character 9, not the number 49. But because we know this is just digits, we can use the value function to convert the text 49 to the number 49, right? But we also notice the alignment here is a little bit different. Yeah, nicely. And I think we're also supposed to make this accounting format, I believe, right? So accounting format, of course, looks like this. It's got the currency. In this case, it's US dollars with 2 digits after the decimal point. One of the things that's important about the currency format is that it has the left alignment of the currency symbol. It always has 2 digits after the decimal point. We can adjust that, of course. And it also displays negative numbers in parentheses versus with a negative sign in front. All right, so that's the first part here. Now we also need to extract the first name and the last name. That's a little bit more sneaky here. So what we could do, what can you do? Well, one thing we could do is we could look for the second colon. How do we find the second comma and colon? Because if we use find, right? If we use find to look for, a colon and a space. I'm going to rename this the second colon and space. If we use find and we look for the colon and a space, it's going to give us, whoops, how come this happened? What did I do? Let's do this again, find, whoops. Oh, to find the text goes first within the text. Here you go. I've reversed the 2 arguments. It's giving us still the first occurrence of that. So how do we get the second occurrence? Well, if you're a little bit attentive, you probably noticed there is an optional third argument. We actually don't have to start searching at position 1. We can actually start searching at any position. So if we start searching after the first colon, then it should find the second colon. Now, how do we know where the first colon is? Well, we kind of know that, right? From here. But obviously that gives us the position of the first colon, so we got to jump 2 over it, or at least 1 over it to make sure we find the second one. Oh, okay, well, that works pretty well. Ooh, yeah, that's a problem, right? Yeah, that's because, of course, it should have, maybe there's no space afterwards, right? It's also because there's no name. So we have to take care of that. We have to make sure that we put an error trap in here. So if there's an error in that function, maybe we should put a marker in here, 0, saying that the second colon is at position 0, which obviously is a non-existent or an invalid position. We can eventually check for that in other expressions if we need to know if there is a member last name, right? Or any name at all. All right, so that's pretty good. All right, so let's see if we can extract at least the full name. So the full name we can grab pretty easily. That's the, there's a couple ways we can do this, right? We can use mid. We could use mid, right? We could use mid, and we could start at the position of the second colon plus 2, because we're going to jump over the colon and the space, and we could grab everything from, no, sorry, I almost, again, made the same mistake. It's the string from which I want to extract the characters, the starting number, and then how many characters I want. So how many characters do I want to go all the way to the end? Well, I can just simply type in 9999. Some really large number that basically says grab 9,999 characters, start at position G4, which is right now the value 28. It's certainly going to get me everything. This is not very extensible. Probably the better thing to do is to actually take the length of the string and say, grab everything from that string. Obviously, a string cannot exceed the number of characters is in it, which means by default, I'm going to be okay with this, right? But if you don't calculate, you can always put in 99999, right? Oh, well, must have made some kind of, oh, okay, there you go. It fixed it for me. One too many parentheses. Yeah, we're still got to take care of this, right? So we're still going to do a little bit of checking. If this value here is equal to 0, then I don't have a name, which means I want to put into the cell right here, nothing, an empty string. Otherwise, I want to do the extraction. By the way, of course, it could have also said here, if G6 is not equal to 0, then I want to do the mid, otherwise empty. So it doesn't matter which way you do your logic, you just have to make sure you put the value if the condition is true first, and then the condition if it's false. All right, so that works. Make sure this works for the other cells as well. Seems too good. So another question is, how do we extract the first name? Well, it's pretty straightforward, right? The first name and the last name was separated by a space. So the first name, first name, last name, space. It's a little bit weird, but all right. See if we can find the first space within this string right here. All right, it's at 5. Nice, 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 nice. Yeah, rats. Of course, gotta go do this again here. If this is equal to 0, then I don't have a name, which means the position, of course, has to be something like 0. So again, I can recognize this. Otherwise, of course, I want to go and find it. All right, so it's 0 if I couldn't find it. It's 5 otherwise. Remember, the reason why 0 works is because 0 is not a valid position for a character inside a string, because in Excel, the first position, the leftmost position of the characters is always 1. All right. So now I could, I think, extract the first name, right? Equal to everything starting on the left edge up until the space. The space is right here. But it's going to include the space, so I have to say -1, so it doesn't include the space, right? Oh, sorry, that was the wrong one, right? I don't want to extract from here. I want to extract from the first name, or the full name, sorry. Oh, yeah, that works. All right. Ah, yes, of course. I gotta say if this number right here, or that number for that matter, is equal to 0, or if that cell right here, H6 is blank, I can use any one of those for conditions, right? So if that's equal to 0, then I know there is no name, which means what goes in the cell here is nothing. Otherwise, I want the leftmost characters up until the space. So again, make sure that the formula is copyable. Good. Last name. It's everything after the space, right? So there's a couple ways we could do this. So I'm going to do it one way. See if we can come up with another way. So I'm going to use mid. I'm going to take this, start at the space, +1, because remember, I'm getting the space. I don't want the space. I got to get +1. And then how many characters? Well, all the way to the end. Little trick to do this. Ah, yeah, but of course, if there's none there, this is going to work peachy fine there in this particular case, so we're good. How are the other ways to do this? Pause the video. See if you can come up with at least a couple more ways to do this. I can think of at least 2 other ways of doing this. So one approach is you could use probably the right function. You could also use mid, not do that, advancing, and then use trim afterwards, right? It would also work. So that's at least 2 that I can think of. All right. Good, I think that does it. So we have everything that we're supposed to solve. We extracted the phi, we converted to accounting format, or I should say we changed the display format to accounting format. We added them up. Actually, probably want to do the same here. Oh, rats. Now, of course, I forgot to put the borders on. Top and bottom border, right? Good. I extracted the first name. I extracted the last name. I had to have some temporary variables. Maybe I want to hide those to make the spreadsheet, the worksheet, look cleaner. All right, this would be something that you could publish, right? And of course, the nice thing is, if the data changes, everything gets adjusted. Now, of course, we do have some problems here. What happens if somebody has a name of Mark W. Shell? They include the middle initial. Yeah, it's not going to quite work, right? So you would have to do a little bit more work to sort of recognize if there is a middle initial. In fact, again, pause the video and see if you can think about a strategy to determine whether there A is a middle initial, and then B, if there is, how would you extract the middle initial? Or if you just want to get the first name and last name, how do you ignore the middle initial? All right, so that's it for now. That gives you a little bit of exercise in the use of some of the string processing functions for extracting properties from an unstructured information object representation.